Perhaps we can begin, Michele. I mean, what is the function of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics?
Well, they're an important organization. The reason I chose them to focus on is that they represent 74,000 registered dietitians. These are nutrition professionals who are really on the front lines of the nation's diet-related chronic disease epidemic. So these are professionals whose job it is to teach Americans how to eat right. Now, they have an impossible job to begin with because of all the reasons that your introduction explained. But what I showed is how the very food companies that are causing these diet-related chronic diseases are influencing this huge organization by way of their annual meeting, and I attended it twice. It's a huge junk food exhibition, and also by way of continuing education. So like you mentioned, the Coca-Cola sponsored educational programs that these registered dietitians are learning. And this is part of the explanation for why Americans aren't getting the straight information they need about how to eat right, when the very professionals who are supposed to tell them that information are being influenced by America's largest food companies.
Well, what's the stated rationale for having these partnerships with industry?
Sure. Well, you know, if you ask them, they will say things, the Academy will say things like, well, we need to have food industry at the table, we need to have dialogue with them, our professionals work with these companies to improve their food products. But really, do we need Hershey's chocolate to be a major sponsor of this organization? I don't see any improvement there, right? I mean,
but can they not be part of the solution, though? Can they not be part of practical solutions to combat obesity?
I haven't seen that. Look, that's what the food industry, that's the tune that we've been hearing from the food industry for years, right? I wrote my book in 2006 about the food industry claims to be part of the solution. So here we are 6, 7 years later, and the nation's chronic disease is only getting worse. So if you show me evidence of how exactly the food industry being at the table and how working with them and having them be part of the solution is actually having any measurable benefit to America's public health, then let's talk about it.
Well, the Academy did decline to join us for this discussion, but we do have a statement from the president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. It says that your report, quote, is a mixture of facts, most of which were obtained from publicly accessible pages on the Academy's website, and opinion and speculation on the author's part. The report consists of publicly available facts filtered through the author's opinions. She is, of course, entitled to her opinions, but opinions are not facts. Let me make it clear that the Academy does not tailor our messages or programs in any way due to influence by corporate sponsors, and this report does not provide evidence to the contrary. Michele Simon.
Okay, so this is a typical tactic, ironically or not, well honed by the food industry, which is to attack the messenger. In this case, the Academy, instead of responding to the very real problems that not only I have pointed out, but many others, including Marion Nestle, for many years, others have pointed out this conflict of interest. Instead of dealing with that problem, they're attacking me, right? And they're saying that I have an agenda and I'm biased and all this name calling, when really they haven't addressed the very real problems that the report points out and just illuminates that others have pointed out for years. And it's really sad. And many of the concerns are being raised by this organization's own members. Okay, so it's not just me, it's many others, and really they are just trying to distract away from the core problem that they know they have.
That suggests, though, that this isn't a very successful way to pull the wool over the eyes of nutritionists. They can see quite plainly that when Coca-Cola sponsors a lecture on the benefits of low-calorie sweeteners, that might not be the most objective lecture in the world.
Well, but part of what I found in my report is that it's not always clear the industry influence. So at the conference itself, for example, they wouldn't necessarily disclose in the program that McDonald's was on the agenda. So you would show up to the session and then there would be a presenter from McDonald's and they would have to disclose, obviously, when they were presenting. But the influence goes deeper than just disclosure. It's really about a culture. So while you might think, well, if an RD, registered dietitian, signs up for a Coca-Cola sponsored webinar, then they know it's influenced. But the thing is that this Academy, by partnering with these major food and beverage companies, are normalizing the very idea of partnering with them and normalizing the idea that legitimate scientific information comes from the likes of Coca-Cola. And so why shouldn't RDs believe the information being presented by the Coke-sponsored MD who says sugar is not a problem for children, aspartame A-OK, right? These are the messages that are coming from Coke that are being endorsed by the Academy, and that's a problem.
To what extent is perhaps questionable academic research, questionable sponsorship of professional organizations then affecting legislation, or perhaps the lack of legislation, would you say, Michele?
I would say it is more the latter. In other words, what these companies are doing when they fund a hugely influential group like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is essentially buying silence. So that means when there is an important policy proposal on the table, like the one you mentioned in your intro, Mayor Bloomberg's proposal to limit the size of sugary soft drinks in New York City, a reasonable public health idea, to 16 ounces, twice the normal size of a serving size. And when that proposal is on the table, you expect the nation's leading group of nutrition professionals to perhaps even endorse the idea, like every other leading health organization has. And yet, the Academy has not only not endorsed the New York City proposal, they put out a press release in the height of the controversy around it saying they did not endorse it and that they wanted to study the issue further. It's all fine to be, scientific about your approach to policymaking, but really what they're doing is delaying taking a position on a crucial policy that is on the table. And even if they are not being influenced by Coca-Cola, certainly the appearance is there. So by partnering with Coca-Cola, whatever their legitimate policy positions might be one way or the other, there is this question lingering over them all the time.
I mean, the big issue right now is the Food and Drug Administration looking like it's about to give the go-ahead to genetically modified salmon in the US. Michele, as we look at the sort of research that they considered as they made that decision, I mean, should we be concerned that they had all the that everything they were considering was what they needed to consider in making that decision?
Right. Well, it's a good example of really relying on industry information. So the Food and Drug Administration, I always emphasize, really, it's hard to blame them too much for the decisions they make when the budget that they are given year to year for food safety, for oversight over all of the different areas that they have jurisdiction over is so lacking. And this is also industry's game, right, to starve the beast, so to speak. So to not allow enough funding to flow through these agencies that need to do their own oversight over a critical issue like GE salmon. So instead, they're relying on the science provided by industry, which of course is biased, as we've been talking about. And so, of course, industry saying, oh, no problem here, just approve this product. And by the way, don't label it, which is another controversy, of course, that's been going on for years. So industry wants to say there's no problem, everything's fine. Oh, by the way, we're patenting this technology, but we don't think it really makes much of a difference for consumers to know that this technology is being used in the food they're eating. And so if this goes through, this will represent the very first animal product that consumers will be eating that is genetically engineered. And you won't know about it unless we get labeling passed, which of course is an ongoing effort.
President Obama came in, the First Lady came in really talking about new campaigns. The response from the lobbies, as has been documented, was ferocious, enormous amount of money being channeled into Washington. Your side of the argument does seem to be losing this. I mean, what are the strategies you're employing to try and fight against such enormous power?
Well, the good news is there is a growing movement. And, the Obama administration, unfortunately, has been largely a failure when it comes to regulating the food industry. These issues are not going away. People are continuing to demand more information about the food they're eating, demanding healthier food. The marketplace will have to respond to that. And although ultimately we do need government to join us in the fight to better regulate industry to provide a healthier food supply for all Americans.
Michele Simon, thank you very much. Bruce Bradley, thank you as well. And that's all from the team in Washington, D.C. for now.